All right, now we're going to do The Runaways next. Christy, what's that about?
This is about the seminal 70s badass rock girl band, The Runaways, hence the name, which launched Joan Jett, of course, and Cherie Currie. And this is sort of about them and it's like a typical music biopic, how the band was formed and how they had their highs and their lows and their drug-induced tantrums. And so here you go.
You dogs will be lucky to get a gig singing in the shower. Go sell Girl Scout cookies. Until...
The Runaways was inspirational, and I liked it. The only problem with it is that it's you know, I've seen the rock movie 1.5 million times, almost as many times as I've seen the car chases. So I saw it in Johnny Cash, I saw it in Ray. It turns out these rock and roll people have drug problems. I didn't see that coming. So, you know, and there were parts of the movie that dragged a little bit. Having said that, by the end, I guess since I'm Jang, I liked it anyway. Okay, and it was, I thought, like I said, you know, I didn't know how cool Joan Jett was and how badass she was, and it's mainly because of her spirit. And I thought the movie did a pretty good job of conveying that, so I liked it overall. I gave it a 7.4. Matt?
I enjoyed this movie too. Now, this movie does have its problems. I find that my biggest complaint is that it's kind of unfocused and it really rambles, right? You don't get a sense of what's so important in Joan Jett's life or Cherie Currie's life that make them need to be rock stars. And, you know, unlike what you get in, say, Ray or Walk the Line, where you really got in those musicians' heads, this one, and especially Cherie Currie, is really an enigma. And I feel like even by the end of the film, as much time as the movie spends on her, by the end of the film, you really still don't know her. And you get a little bit more of, you know, I felt like I knew a little bit more why Joan Jett was doing what she was doing. But even then, there's not a lot of explanation. Now, that being said, I think that if you're at all a music fan, the music, first of all, is fantastic. And to me, the problems in the structure of the movie are vastly outweighed by by the opportunity to learn about kind of what went down with this band in the early days. And I have to point out that I thought Kristen Stewart, who gets a bad rap for being in the Twilight films, I think on a certain level, is fantastic in this. I think she nails it as Joan Jett. And Dakota Fanning is great. And I'll tell you who really steals the movie is Michael Shannon as Kim Fowley, the record producer. And for people who saw Revolutionary Road, he was the neighbor's son who had the mental problems and I thought really stole that movie as well. It's nice to see him get another really breakout role. In fact, I found myself wanting to see a whole movie about him. So in spite of the problems, I thought the movie was pretty good. I gave it a 6.5.
It's funny that you mentioned, though, that you think that Cherie Currie is an enigma in this because it's based on her memoir. And I think it's mostly about Cherie Currie, when in actuality, Joan Jett is way more interesting, and they should have focused more on her. So Cherie Currie's book is the basis for this. Joan Jett is an executive producer. So you're never really going to get the full nitty-gritty on it. And the movie itself reminded me of a Runaways song in that it's fun, it's kick-ass, you're enjoying it while you're there, but then when you think about it afterward, like, there's not a whole lot of substance there. So, but I had a good time. You have your gratuitous love scene between K-Stu and D-Fan, very soft and tender. But again, with that, it kind of feels gratuitous because there's no context for it. It in no way informs the dynamic of the band. Is there really an attraction there? Are they just like screwed up, disenfranchised teenagers messing around in a drug-induced haze? So it sort of feels like it's just there for no good reason. Yeah, they're awesome together. And Kristen Stewart, this is finally a good use for her surliness. Like, she has the same look on her face all the time. Here it makes sense because she's Joan Jett. She's a badass rock chick. And Dakota Fanning is really good in this. This is the first time you really feel like she's a grown-up and not a little girl. And yeah, Michael Shannon's great. He steals every scene he's in. He's unpredictable and weird and fun. So I had a good time. I gave it a 7. Yeah, it's kind of superficial, but you know, the hair and the clothes and the music, beyond just the Runaways songs, you have a soundtrack of like Iggy Pop and David Bowie and the Sex Pistols. So it was a great time. It was a great time for hair and big chunky boots.
Okay. You know, I love doing this because I love to hear you guys' opinions on it. And good points that make me go, oh, yeah, that's a great point, and points I disagree with. So let's get started on that. Michael Shannon, I thought that's who this movie was about. You know, that record producer right? I mean, he was the main star. You understood his motivation. You understood how he got things done. You understood how the industry and the system worked by the end of the movie. That's why I found it so educational. You're right, Matt. I didn't find out too much about Cherie Currie or even Joan Jett that much, right? But, you know, I didn't mind that much because I thought the record producer was so much more interesting. But, you know, the one part that I would have liked to have, you know, the movie go into more, that goes towards Chrissy's point about I'd like to know more about Joan Jett, is at the end they tell you, oh, by the way, you know, this band broke apart and then Joan Jett started her own band, as most people know, right? And her first album was rejected by 23 different record companies. It had I Love Rock and Roll on it and wound up selling 10 million copies. What I'd love to know is, how did she do it herself?
Right, she financed
like,
it
that's
herself.
the movie I want to see.
Right, it's more interesting, right. You know, I agree with you. And what's funny, too, is that Cherie Currie is now a chainsaw artist in the Valley.
Right.
I mean, that's bizarre. How did she go from here to there? And the other funny thing with the whole epilogue of Where Are They Now, you would never know Lita Ford was ever in the Runaways.
Right, and you would
she
never
gets
know.
Massive short shrift here.
Well,
It's
and you would
weird.
never know that one of those girls, and I can't remember which one off the top of my head, one of them went on to be a founding member of the Bangles as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The one that Aaliyah Shawkat plays?
I think that was the one.
And also, it's a
I
total
think.
waste of her because she's, you know, maybe.
Well, but they
from
didn't have the
Arrested
rights to
Development.
her story.
Oh, is that
as
what
part
it
of the
is?
issue. Yeah.
She could stand there and hold the bass and go,
Right.
yeah, whatever. Right.
All right. Well, the other part that I want to talk about was the gratuitous lesbian scene. Are you
Why
surprised?
not? We should
Yes.
give it more time.
Right. I don't think it was gratuitous.
Okay.
I think whether those girls were lesbian, and it almost implied that all of them were, is not central to the story, but I think it's really important to the story, right? But they didn't. But I agree with you, Chrissy, that they didn't resolve it. I'm like,
Yeah.
so are they just having fun, or are they just on
Well,
drugs, or are they?
Yeah.
Which ones are lesbians, which ones aren't? I
Are they
don't
just
get it.
lonely and they want a human
Yeah, you know-
connection of some sort because they don't have it at home from their parents? Yeah, I don't know either.
Right. And, you know, I think that as much as, you know, Michael Shannon, as Kim Fowley, the producer, keeps talking about how they're selling sex, right? And at that age and at that time and being on tour, musicians are going to start fooling around and probably with each other, given enough drugs and whatever else is going on. But I felt that there was, you know, you kind of, as a viewer, have to just figure that out for yourself. There's nothing to really explain and put it in context, right? There's the other scene where one of the girls is masturbating in the shower as Joan Jett is talking to her. And I thought, well, what's the point of that scene?
I thought the
just to
point
be
of that
titillating?
scene was to point out that she was also a lesbian, right? Because she then, you know, I don't want to give away what she eventually orgasms to, but it's not a guy, okay?
Right.
So, but then it's all unresolved. So, what happened? Which, you know, so, you know, I was a little left feeling like I wanted more. I wanted to know how Joan Jett made it, you know, the second time around. I wanted to know what their motivations were. But it's funny, despite all of our criticism of it here, we still liked it.
Yeah,
fun.
I agree. I really liked it. And to me, the biggest problem with the movie is that there's hints of some kind of relationship, and you start to wonder, is Joan Jett really in love with Cherie Currie, who seems to be this really kind of, this character that's really a cipher that you really can't I mean, even her own family, and even she herself doesn't seem to know what's going on in her head. And could it be this kind of story of unrequited love from Joan Jett to Cherie? And I feel like there's just the barest hints of that, but they never, ever follow up on it.
Yeah, they could have used 2 more lines. One line that explained Cherie Currie's thinking a little bit. You know, I'm so confused.
Right.
You know, what I really want to do is chainsaw art. You know, something that tells me what she's thinking. And or one line out of Joan Jett saying, "Damn, I wanted her, but but she drove me crazy." Something. It was missing 2 lines. Now, having said that, overall score for us combined is 6.9, which is pretty high. You know, again, in this case, it's not the kind of thing that if you don't see it in the movie theater, oh, you really missed out. There's no Kraken.
Through 3D Joan Jett. Woohoo!
Right. It's not 3D. It's not 4D. You don't need to see it in IMAX. But, you know, look, but if you got it as a DVD, I think it's, you know, you'd really enjoy it. And it's, and you're not going to, I don't think you're going to go terribly wrong if you see it in the movie theater, because I think it is inspirational and a really interesting story. We just wish they'd have fleshed it out a little bit more. So there you have it. Those are our 2 reviews for this week. And Christy and Matt, thanks for doing it. And we'll be back next week, as usual, at 5 p.m. Eastern on theyoungturks.com.